Um, so you will not be recorded, only the speakers will be recorded, but we do share the content of this with friends who are not able to make it this evening. So I'm thrilled to welcome you to this event, our June Quaker Changemaker event, supporting the Changemaker, 10 years of communities in action. Over the past 5 years, these events, these Quaker Changemaker events, have been spaces for sharing how faith guides the way that people in this amazing community are called to act in the world. People have shared stories about how their lives have intersected with advocacy, with conscientious objection, with public service, with teaching, and more. And tonight we're celebrating the connections we get to build doing that work in community. We have some really great speakers and stories to share, so I'm excited to be here with you for that. But first, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Lindsay to share some logistics about our gathering.
Good evening, friends. Good to see y'all. My name is Lindsay Bensick, and I'm the Governance, Community, and Culture Administrative Coordinator here at FCNL, and I'll be helping to run technology for our event tonight. So first, I'd invite you to say hello in the chat. I see some of y'all have already done so. You're invited to share your name, pronouns, where you're joining us from, and any land acknowledgement if you would like as well. And I can share a resource where you can find that information for yourself. As you can see, we are recording the event this evening. And like Alicia mentioned, participants will not be included in the recording of the event, only our speakers, but feel free to turn off your video if you're uncomfortable keeping it on. Captioning is available automatically. And if you don't want to see the captions, you can click more in the Zoom toolbar, go to captions, and then click hide subtitles. And then we'll have some time for folks to ask questions towards the end of the event. We'll do our best to address as many questions as we have time for while we're on tonight, but may not be able to get to all of them. So if you can send your questions in the chat, we can direct them to our panelists for follow-up. And I see that we have some friends joining by phone tonight. Good to see some phone numbers from here. If you're calling in on the phone, if you have a question that you'd like to ask since you don't have access to the chat, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will raise your hand for you, and then we'll unmute you and invite you to ask your question via telephone. And then lastly, I will be on hand tonight if you're in need of any Zoom tech support. You can private chat me from Zoom's chat bar, or you can email me at lbensick@fcnl.org. I think that wraps everything up from my end, so I'll turn it back to you, Alicia.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. So let us get going with our event tonight. So as I said, we are celebrating 10 years of two programs that thousands of people have been part of. Some of them are in this room. Some of them may be in this room. One is our advocacy teams, which is for everyone across the country, and our advocacy core, which is our cohorts of young adult organizers. We're celebrating how these programs and the change makers working within them have brought Quaker witness to Washington, talking about the resilience and community we've built. And I'll just share, I have not been a participant in either of these programs, but I did get my start in advocacy through FCNL's Young Adult Program as a program assistant many years ago. And I think that the people and the support that this network and this community have provided over many, many years has been really important to me. So I'm very happy to, be part of this conversation and think about how it's been important to so many people. The title of this event about supporting the changemaker is a callback to an article that the second general or executive secretary of FCNL, Ed Snyder, wrote back in the 80s. It was an article called supporting the peacemaker and or sustaining the peacemaker. And it's an article I think of a lot, talking about sort of ways that people can burn out on things like anger and fear, and what are the things that are actually needed to sustain this work for the long haul. And so that is what I think we're channeling in this event this evening, is how we sustain our work for change over time. So we're joined by two people who know our advocacy team and advocacy core program better than I do. Our young adult program director, Larissa, and our senior advocacy teams manager, Tim. So welcome to you both. We'll also have some people who've been participants in these programs over time, joining us, and they'll be introduced as they're speaking. But Tim and Larissa, I'd love for you each to just start by saying a few words about your work, what you do at FCNL, about the advocacy communities you work with, and what is your favorite or most engaging part of this work for you? And Lindsay, I think if we want to pin the three of us, then people can see us more easily. I guess let's see. Larissa, do you want to start?
Yes, I'll start. Hi, like what Alicia said, my name is Larissa Sanhueza. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm director of the Young Adult Program. And the Young Adult Program is really a couple programs that provide young adults with opportunities to lobby together, get trained on how to be an organizer in their community, and just generally be part of this larger movement, this larger community of advocates that is our young adult network. And on this call, like Alicia said, we are celebrating one of those young adult programs, which is the Advocacy Corps. And the Advocacy Corps hires a dozen young adults on a yearly basis to organize their communities around one issue, and they work for 10 months. So they are focused on one of our many portfolios for 10 months of the year. And throughout those 10 months, the organizers will do a lot of work. So they will bring dozens of their own community members into the work by hosting events. They'll do lobby visits. They will train community members on how to join those lobby visits. They'll do one-on-one chats to bring people closer to the work that the organizer is doing. They will also publish LTEs in their local media, letters to the editor. And so they are a really critical part of building our young adult network. And we learn a lot from every cohort of Advocacy Corps organizers, just as much as we hope they will be taking a lot from the program. And to answer Alicia's last question, the most energizing thing for me about this work, and many have heard me say this already, is getting to experience someone having like a light bulb moment, like realizing something for the first time. I feel like being director of the Young Adult Program, I've worked at FCNL now 7 years. I'm also an alum of the program. I have seen people go through a lot of advocacy firsts by being in the Young Adult Program. So like that might be their first time lobbying ever, their first time speaking their story out loud, like ever, or their first time visiting Washington, D.C. That's also very exciting. So I've just really cherished all of those moments and really love that I get to be part of making those moments for like different communities of young adults that come through our programs.
Great. Thank you so much, Larissa. And Tim, love to have you share your uh, responses to these questions.
Yes, thank you, Alicia, and good evening, everyone. It's really good to be with you tonight. My name is Tim Heishman, and I lead the Advocacy Teams program for FCNL. And our Advocacy Teams network is made up of about 135 different teams in As of this month, all 50 states. And so these teams schedule meetings with congressional offices, publish in the media, and organize community events to drive federal policy change towards peace and justice. And the most energizing part of this work for me is similar to what Larissa shared, but getting to watch people realize the power that they have to use their voice for change. When people realize that with a little training and some new tools, they can make a difference, that gives me a lot of hope for the future of our democracy and nation. And this is confirmed over and over again for me. It happens all the time as teams develop long-term relationships with congressional staff and members over years. So change takes a long time, but the advocacy teams are here for the long haul.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for both of you for giving us a little introduction of the program. And now, as I said, we have people on this call with us who've been part of these programs throughout the time at different points along the timeline of these programs. And so we were sort of thinking of this as inviting people to share a postcard or a little, sort of where they entered and what their experience has been like. So we're going to start with someone who's been part of our advocacy teams program, not from the beginning, but from an early day here. So Nancy is going to join our little group here. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much. And thank you, Larissa, Tim, and Lindsay. Hi, friends. I'm so happy to join you all this afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. I noticed somebody maybe from New Zealand, where, am I correct about that? My daughter lives in Tasmania, so it's close to my heart. I'm Nancy Berman, and I'm a member of the Stony Point, New York advocacy team in the Lower Hudson Valley, just northwest of New York City. Our team is about 8.5 years old. And when we started, we were the 32nd team. And as Tim said, we have, I think, 135 teams right now. I'm also the New York statewide team coordinator. We have 8+ teams in New York and several individuals who are not yet part of a team. And we meet as a state periodically throughout the year for support, information sharing, and planning statewide actions like Senate lobby visits, call-in days, letter writing campaigns, and the like. So the 8 or so local teams get together periodically. Our first meeting this year was in March, and we started with personal check-ins and team updates. Needless to say, after the regime change on January 20th, the rollback of human and civil rights, the chaotic dismantling of our government and our international commitments, and much, much more. There was a fair amount of disillusionment and fear expressed at our March meeting. One relatively new, 2-ish-year-old team spoke about what felt like a Sisyphean task of moving their member of Congress to speak and take action on aid for Gaza. They were questioning and discerning whether lobbying was the correct path to meet the needs of this time. Several other teams and individuals chimed in agreement. Then another team that has been active for about the same length of time as our team, about 8 years or so, spoke up. This team has long-standing, good working relationships with staff in all 3 of their local member of Congress's office. Their district had just elected a new congressperson. However, at least one senior member of their local staff had remained to serve the new congressperson. So this team reached out early in this year to all 3 offices to invite them to their meeting house to discuss the Advocacy Team Network's 2025 campaign, Aid Not Arms for Gaza. They all enthusiastically came and offered no time limit. They spent an hour enjoying a cozy fire, warm cider, and homemade cookies which Tim reminded me were decorated with the words "Aid Not Arms," while discussing our ask. Needless to say, regardless of actions taken by these members of Congress, the mood in our statewide meeting lifted, and the discussion pivoted to focus on the power of our network, especially as it grows. We talked about, while one team may be struggling, another may be soaring. We talked about the importance of remaining connected and supporting one another. We talked about the advantage of having a flex issue campaign this year, climate and the preservation of the Inflation Reduction Act. We shared strategies, brainstormed, and planned. Our next meeting is tomorrow, when I hope we will plan our statewide Senate lobby visits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That's such a inspiring story about, something that really embodies the spirit of this program. Tim, I just wonder, like, what stands out to you from that experience?
Well, so much, and I love this story. And one thing that came up for me was how, Nancy often reminds me that this work is all about relationships. And I just think that that story particularly illustrates that well. Because I think relationships, especially across differences, are increasingly rare these days in our society, which is really sad. But to see how advocacy teams practice staying in relationship, and maybe a fire really helps in the fireplace as well. And then the persistence really comes out for me as well. That, like Nancy said, some teams might be soaring and other teams might be struggling, but together we can persist because we're not alone. And the last thing that comes to me is, like, if you can give your ask on a cookie, I think it will be remembered. So just a tip, advocacy tip to take away from tonight.
I know at some point when our asks have been around budget priorities in the Pentagon, we've had people serve pie to their members of Congress. So yeah, lots of opportunity for creativity. Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy. So we're gonna keep going on our postcards from from our advocates and invite Sergio to come. Yay. Hi, Sergio. And Sergio is someone who's been was part of one of our early advocacy corps classes back in the early days of the first Trump administration. And Sergio, I would love to have you introduce yourself, sort of where you are, what your location, and then share some about what's been important about the advocacy corps experience, both while you were doing it and then sort of how it's stayed with you.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. So my name is Sergio. I currently live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I was born and raised, and I had the opportunity to be part of the second advocacy corps class, and that was in 2016, 2017. And the issue that we were working on was immigration. So the first class had worked on climate, and then we were the second class. We got to work on immigration. And I, decided I came to Spring Lobby Weekend in 2016, and that's where I learned that the next cohort was going to be on immigration. And I decided to apply because I come from an immigrant family. I care a lot about immigration, so I thought it would be a good opportunity. And I was also I was going to be in my sophomore year of college.
Great. Thank you. And so, what has been what has been important to you from the experience? Like, what kind of things did you learn that have been important? Like, how is that experience of being in the advocacy corps sort of influenced the last 10 years?
Yeah, so the advocacy was the second program that I was involved with in FCNL, and after that, I was a summer intern and also did the program assistant fellowship at FCNL as well. But that program really got me the opportunity to find my voice, how to speak out, how to advocate, and also how to organize and how to learn these tools of advocacy, right? How to how do you build relationships, how to power map, how to learn who represents you, what their stances are. I was organizing in a predominantly Republican district in Western New York, where I went to school. And it was at the end of the Obama administration, beginning of the Trump administration. And so, at the end of the Obama years, immigration wasn't moving at all. It was Congress wasn't doing much. It was different parties controlled the White House and Congress, and then all of a sudden, immigration rose to the top as Trump took office. So that gave me an opportunity to learn how to talk to people who disagreed, who had different views, but also an opportunity to find community, right? There was 18 organizers of us around the country, all in different contexts, different communities. We all had to talk about the issue in different ways. And, one of the things that I, was able to do was I was able to build relationships with that congressional office. And I was able to take people to lobby. We're required throughout the program to take 30 people into lobby visits throughout the 10 months. And so at first it was difficult to have a conversation because nothing was really happening in Congress. And then all of a sudden there's a new administration and things are moving, right? There's the Muslim ban, we were trying to protect DACA as well. And so that, this gave me the opportunity to, people on campus who wanted to do something, giving them the opportunity to be like, this is the way you can speak out. You can call your member of Congress. You can come on a lobby visit with me. And then we found out that our local member was having a town hall. So we organized about 30 of us from campus to go. It was a really heated town hall because of everything that was happening in the beginning of 2017. And so I got the opportunity to ask a question because I had built a relationship with the congressional office, right? So I got the last question I was able to ask the member, what he was going to do on immigration, where his stance was. And I think it was all because of building that relationship with the congressional office, right? So, that taught me the ability of, all this work, like we said, Tim was saying, it's about relationship building, and it's about, also in these times is like, how do you come together and there's a sense of community and you support each other, right? We would get on monthly calls, the 18 of us, and we were all struggling differently, right? So you get that sense of support, and then also the opportunity that a lot of the skills that I've learned from the program, I use them in my daily job, right? I work for a food bank now as the advocacy person, so I'm mobilizing people to advocate on issues of hunger now. And so I learned all those advocacy skills from being part of this 10-month program.
Great, thank you. Larissa, do you want to ask anything else or respond in any way?
Yeah, I was just thinking like the words like steady drumbeat were going through my head because like Sergio was just saying, um, there are ebbs and flows to how much an office will pay attention to an issue, but our job as advocates is to be the consistent voice to make sure that they don't forget about the issue that we're pushing them on. Because if a bill is moving, if it's not moving, if there's a budget thing going on, if there's not a budget thing going on, like all of these factors play a role in what a congressional office will be paying attention to in that moment. And so to hear that, Sergio, you just kind of like really picked at that relationship, developed it, and then during a moment where your voice really like counted in a room of, like you said, a lot of tension, and you needed to make sure like your question was heard, this one topic was heard, that you were given that opportunity because you had been that steady drumbeat before that. And I think about like I wrote down the words like that this work takes a lot of patience, it takes persistence, even though so much of what we're experiencing now feels like changes that happen overnight. Congressional changes and congressional procedures don't happen overnight. That is really like long-term slow change. And so having community that sustains us to be that steady drumbeat is so important. And I'm glad Sergio mentioned the cohort aspect of the advocacy core, because we do a lot of work to make sure that this group of people trusts each other and actually like knows each other. And there's a big training. It's a 10-day training that we do at the beginning of their program that helps create some of those bonds and some of that trust and that community from the beginning so that the 10 months are sustainable from that foundation that was built at the beginning. So, um, yeah, that's a reflection I'm having. And actually, I'm curious, Sergio, if you remember anything about your intensive training and like the community that was built there, and then we could move on.
Yeah, so you get to spend 10 days in August in DC, right? Learning intensely about this legislative issue, right? We got the opportunity to go to the White House, even meet with at the time with Speaker Rand Paul's staff, right? So, just being in that context and being able to hear from different experts who are working on this issue, but also I'm still friends with a lot of the people, those 18 of us that were part of that cohort, right? They've become friends in this work and in this movement. So, um, and I've seen them at other FCNL gatherings or just when I have a good friend in San Diego or in New York, that I still keep up with who were part of, or in Ohio who were part of the advocacy corps.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think something that I think about a lot is just how much how it feels like FCNL really invests in the people in these programs and like wants to support individual people to succeed and do well. And just that in addition to the sort of relationship building and like connecting with people who may hold different views and learning, getting practice and conflict and things like that. Just that idea of like being valued by the institution that's trying to, support you in advocacy is also really powerful. So thank you, Sergio. And yeah, so we've talked to a few people who've been part of this program and part of this work for since the beginning. And we also invited some friends to join us who are newer additions, newer work in this area. So I'm going to invite Susan to get spotlighted. Hi, Susan. So Susan recently helped start an advocacy team in Normal, Illinois. And I would love, Susan, for you to share a bit about yourself and what drew you to starting an advocacy team. Why did you sort of take that plunge? It's quite a bit of work to, get enough people so that we'll show up and do the training. So love to hear your experience.
Okay, well, I live in Normal, Illinois, a Midwestern city with a twin. The twin city is Bloomington, Illinois, not to be confused with Bloomington, Indiana. Our community is divided between two congressional districts, the Illinois 17th, represented by Democrat Eric Sorensen, and the Illinois 16th, represented by Republican Darren LaHood. So our assignment is to move both these congressional representatives closer to where we and FCNL want them, as well as our Democratic senators, Richard Durbin and Tammy Duckworth. I became aware of FCNL shortly after I became a Quaker officially way back in 1980. So I've been aware for some time, but I didn't learn about advocacy teams until either I think late 2023 or early 2024. FCNL had a book club meeting via Zoom on the topic of the book Light in Gaza. And I had not been particularly concerned about Gaza, I'm sorry to say, but my sister, who teaches at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, was concerned about Gaza, passionately so. And so when I saw this book club event was happening, I invited her and we both went and we both loved the event. But that's where I learned about the existence of the Advocacy Team program. And I learned that Gaza was the focus for 2025, so I definitely wanted in. I hoped my Quaker meeting would be enthusiastic, and I told various non-Quaker friends about it. Some of them told their friends, and now I have a little email list of 23 people who I can count on, and other people that I can try out and see if they're interested. And people keep coming to us. So our group now has a number of members of Bloomington Normal Monthly Meeting, of which I am a member. But our advocacy team also has Methodists, Mennonites, Catholics, Unitarians, and unaffiliated folks. We have had one real life lobbying event with one of Senator Duckworth's staffers. And by real life, I mean Zoom, as opposed to lobbying by letter or something. So let's see. I don't know if I've answered the questions. Have I answered the questions? I've just kind of told you.
Yeah, no, I think that is really helpful. And Tim, I just wonder if there's anything more you'd like to ask Susan or reflect on. I know, did you help launch that team in Illinois?
Yeah, that I helped launch that team with Eleni, who's our new advocacy team organizer. So we got to go to Illinois, go to Normal and meet Susan, and Susan is a great cook, by the way, I can just say. But yeah, what inspires me so much about you, Susan, and your team and the story is that it's just a great antidote to despair. I mean, you might think that, oh, the people that run these programs, they never get discouraged. Well, that's not actually true. I can't speak for Larissa, but I'm not immune from despair and discouragement. But the fact that, you know, Susan was able to just bring together her community and do this, I mean, it happens with regularity, but just to see it, it's like, okay, like we can organize, we can mobilize. And I think the timing of it too, it was just in the first 2 months of the new administration. That feels like 2 years ago, but it was this year. And, so it was just a time where I think a lot of us needed hope. And yeah, every time I talked to Susan, there were 3 or 4 new people that wanted to be part of this. And that can happen in any community across the country. Like any of us on this call can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we change the world.
One group of friends at a time.
Yeah.
And friends of friends. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Susan. And then our last invited guest is Rachel, and Rachel is a relatively recent alum of our Advocacy Core program, and also actually now is on FCNL staff. She got so excited about advocacy that we hired her to be our Native American advocacy lobbyist. So Rachel, welcome. And you got the nice advertisement for the advocacy teams behind you as well in our office. So I would love to hear from you about sort of what drew you to the Advocacy Core, what your experience was like more recently. I think you had a lot of your experience over Zoom because of the pandemic, if I am remembering correctly. And sort of what you think makes FCNL's approach unique, what attracts you to doing this work.
Well, thank you, Alicia. So, hi everyone. It's nice to see all of you. I think Alicia did a great job introducing me. I don't really have much more to add. Other than that, I'm from a really rural, deep red state, South Dakota. And so my experience with the Advocacy Core was really colored by that experience, going into offices that definitely understood the issue. So I worked on the Indian boarding school bill, which is what I continue to work on today at FCNL. And so, South Dakota has a very high population of Native folks. And so staff were really understanding and knew a lot about the issue, but didn't necessarily share the same viewpoints or reasonings for why the particular bill was so important. Um, and so, for me, I didn't really know anything about Quakers. I certainly didn't know anything about FCNL prior to joining the Advocacy Corps. And so what was unique for me particularly was uh, using a faith-based approach, which is something that I think I've become much more confident over time utilizing, and certainly stepping into my own faith journey. But originally, it felt like such a novel idea that instead of coming as a Republican or a Democrat or even a concerned citizen, I could come as a person of faith and use that perspective to help, sort of, I think, take away a lot of preconceived notions that staff might have about what you're coming in to say. I think staff may see, a young person and they think, oh, I probably know what they're going to say. But as soon as you say, and I'm here with the Quakers, all of the preconceived notions go out the window, and they always ask about oats. So, that was, I think, really useful just to break down barriers. But then also, and now as a, moving on from the Advocacy Corps and as a professional advocate, um, that importance of faith-based advocacy has become so much more true for me, um, especially in this new administration, and certainly last Congress, when Republicans held the majority of the Congress. There are organizations that are very aligned with FCNL in terms of our goals. And advocacy, but many of them are not able to get the meetings that FCNL can get. They don't have the platform that we have, simply because they're aligned with a party or they're a quote unquote progressive organization. Whereas with FCNL, we are coming to the table with no money, with no checks to sign, just with our sincerely expressed faith. And so that, to me has been so helpful in terms of meeting with offices and talking to folks, and, building these important and critical relationships that, we use to lobby every day. And I hope that that answers, all your questions.
Yeah, well, I wonder, do you remember like sort of how you learned to do that kind of faith-based advocacy? Like sort of what was it, what about your experience helped you feel more confident in that?
Yeah, there's a lot of resources certainly at FCNL to talk about what it means to lobby from a Quaker perspective. So, I certainly utilize our Team Quake, all of our, written materials and resources. But then I also started attending Friends Meeting of Washington here in DC. And becoming a regular attender really helped me understand, the community that I am in now and also representing.
Great. Thank you. So Larissa, what do you think? Anything you want to ask Rachel, or what do you remember from that advocacy core experience class?
Well, I love that you're saying, Rachel, about how you've started attending Friends Meeting of Washington and how you've kind of been on your own faith journey. I think that's not a requirement of any of our programs by any means, but it is nice to see when that happens, where someone who maybe already was looking for like a spiritual home ends up finding it through FCNL, through the friends, Quakers that they meet in the work that they do with us. And I am one of those people who did not know much about Quakerism before I arrived at FCNL and kind of found a spiritual home. So it's very meaningful to see people go through that experience. Those young adults who do, not everyone has that experience, but it is meaningful to witness. And something else I was thinking about, Rachel, I mean, you didn't say exactly this, but I was thinking how we hold such a unique space as a faith-based organization that will sometimes open doors. Well, yeah, well, you did kind of say that. Yeah, like we're able to open some doors that maybe others aren't. And I was thinking about what Tim said way earlier in the program, where like we're not alone. We are not alone. And so I think it's the power of bringing people with strong values, strong faith together, that is opening those doors. And I'm thinking about one Advocacy Corps alum who couldn't be on this call, but she was very, very much struggling to get a lobby visit with Senator Chuck Schumer, a busy man, right? So, she could not get this visit. She was trying everything, all of our tips and tricks, call, email, go to the district office. Maybe one of us can go across the street. And actually, I think that this was deep pandemic time. So there was no like we could do an in-person type of visit. And she, through her organizing in the program, started a little interfaith coalition of people from New York that wanted to speak to Senator Schumer together. And that opened the door. And they were able to talk to Senator Schumer himself. It wasn't even one of his staffers. Like he got on the Zoom call. And then we, got a picture and we were all very excited about it for many reasons. But I just remember how excited she was and how excited all of us were because there were many of us that had been pulled into this struggle at this point. We all knew that we were not able to schedule with Senator Schumer for some reason. He did not want to meet with this person. But she managed it, and it was by showing that there was power in numbers, power in the faith of the people who were in that group, and it ended up being, I think, a productive conversation, if I remember correctly. But that story was coming to me while you were talking, Rachel, and it's just, yeah, I'll repeat that I love witnessing these moments in our programs with young adults who are maybe just learning these tools for the first time. Like that first big success feels amazing. And so I love reminiscing on them.
Great, thank you. Well, we have some time now. If there are questions that you all in the audience have, invite you to put them in the chat and we'll spotlight all of our friends again so that we can see them and see if there's a question directed to any one person. And while you're thinking, I think I would invite maybe Tim and Larissa to talk about like the ways that these programs intersect. So we have all these like specific programs that are sort of geared towards people in their communities or young adults or different populations of people. But I think one of the exciting things is when people can come together and work together. So Tim, I know some of the advocacy teams that we've launched recently have been, led by young adults. Do you want to talk about any of the intersection of these programs?
Yeah, that has been one of the most exciting parts of my work recently is getting to work more with Larissa to help bring these amazing programs together. So much more to come. But well, I guess I could say first there was a lobby visit or a series of lobby visits actually in Richmond, Indiana. There was a campus chapter, correct me if I'm wrong, Larissa, an advocacy corps organizer, and an advocacy team that all had 3 lobby visits in the same day or in 2 days on 2 or 3 different issues. And it just warmed my heart that all these different people from different backgrounds and different programs and walks of life came together to advocate for change. But yeah, we have launched teams in Brooklyn, in Mississippi, this Saturday in San Diego, and some other teams that have been led by young adults. And in the case of this Saturday in San Diego, it's a former Advocacy Corps organizer now starting an advocacy team. So we just love to see that. And I think you'll see more and more of that in the months and years to come.
Yeah. we talk about creating lifelong advocates, and we're starting to put that into practice. I will say that my oldest kid is starting at Earlham in the fall, and I have said, you don't have to join the campus chapter or the advocacy team, but you could. So, and that is a kid that was born while I was working at FCNL. So talk about a lifelong, lifelong connection and advocate. I do see we have a friend on the phone with a raised hand. Would you like to ask your question? See if they're able. All right, I
I'm
think you're
sorry, I
unmuted.
had trouble. I was getting many signal, many
Okay.
conversations. Alicia, I wanted to let you know I was one of 30 of 1963 graduates of Sandy Spring Friends School, and
Okay.
I know you're part of it, and we loved that school, and we just hope it keeps going. I mean, I have an actual general question. I live in northern New Hampshire, and it's a very red district, and you know what? I'm not, as my brother would say, you're not going to fight it, just live it. So when I give monthly to FCNL, but I have no idea where my funds are going, so maybe you can't answer that, but I totally believe in FCNL. I was a birthright friend, became a Catholic, and then came back. And I really want to know, because I always join FCNL, and I'm going to join tomorrow night too. I really believe in FWCC and FCNL so strongly, especially now with the man on the hill. So I was just wondering if you can answer where some of the funds go, and if you can, I understand.
Yeah, and can you tell me your name just so that I can
I'm sorry,
follow up?
Debbie Reagan.
Okay.
And I was raised in New York Yearly Meeting, and now I'm part of New England Yearly Meeting.
All right. Well, I'm not going to be able to give specifics right now on this call, but I would say that, you're looking at one of the places that your funds are going. We're talking about.
I figured that. Good.
Yeah.
I really admire every one of you young people, because I'm 81, and you know what? I just can't do it anymore. But I really admire all of your work. Keep on going.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. All right. I guess I'm wondering if any of the folks on this call, or who've spoken, have questions for each other, or things that you would like to sort of curiosities you'd like to ask, or anything you've thought of since you were speaking that you want to add. Larissa, go ahead.
Well, I asked Sergio this question and I forgot to ask Rachel, which is about the summer intensive. I'm curious what memory you have of the training that happens at the beginning of the Advocacy Core program, and like how that kind of laid a foundation, I guess, for the program itself and your cohort.
All right. Oh, such a good question. For me, my first solo lobby visit was at the Washington Summer Intensive. And I was so scared. And I almost wish I had asked someone to go with me, but I was trying to put on a brave face and do it by myself. But I was so scared walking into those offices. And then I walked in, and I'm from a small state, and I knew like 3 people in each of the offices. Um, and and then I saw people from my hometown and all of that, and I that really set me up for realizing that politics is huge, especially when you're in DC. Now that I work at a professional level, there's so many people asking for so many things all of the time, but states are small, and if you live, if your districts are small, and so you can develop a relationship so much. Oh, my lights turned off. So much more quickly than you think you can. And so that really stuck with me and made me a lot less nervous going forward, and made me way more excited to take on the challenge, and felt a little bit less like a tiny little fish in a big, big sea.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or afterthoughts that folks have had before I ask you your last question? All right. So I'm just going to ask you this, and then we're going to go. I'll call on you, and you can all respond to one final question before we close. But first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, and our audience and our panelists, and these conversations are really important for keeping us all connected and hopeful in doing work that's really hard and long term. But my question, we're talking about 10 years of these programs, this work. Obviously, FCNL's work goes back much further, more than 80 years. But as you're thinking about these kind of structures to sustain and support people working to make change, what are your hopes for the next 10 years? And I'll start with Tim and then Larissa, just so you're ready.
Well, I have two answers for that. And the first is just that these two programs that we're talking about tonight, but more of like campus chapters and other programs, just can be more integrated so that we have more relationships across generations and backgrounds. And then the second thing I would say is, I mean, everybody I talk to is just wowed by FCNL's network. I was talking to the speaker for the upcoming Advocacy Teams National Call next week, and she was just in awe of this network that we have. But I hope that we can just continue to build on our knowledge and become better organizers in our communities, become better at networking among other groups in coalition, just to add to the expertise we already have as lobbyists. But yeah, I can't wait to see what this will be like in 10 years.
Great. Thank you. Larissa, what do you think?
Yes, I agree so much with what Tim said. I was thinking like, okay, I have my personal answer, and then I have like the more internal structural answer, which is like, I do want our programs to just get closer and closer together. And like Tim said, we're meeting a bunch to discuss future collaborations and like what some of what these programs could look like in the next couple years. So I'm excited about that. And then something that I said when we were talking just as a group preparing for this was just how hard it feels right now for a lot of us to show up, to keep showing up. And so I guess for the next 10 years, I just hope for that we keep showing up. I'm saying that to myself because I need to give myself a pep talk, I think. And I'm saying that for anyone else who needs it too, because I think it's important to, part of building relationship and building community and sustaining ourselves in this work is also being honest when it can feel really hard, and not holding that in, and trying to handle it yourself. And so I really hope that we keep showing up in the next 10 years. I was saying that the young adult program, I've seen the resilience through so much. Like the pandemic, we went fully on Zoom for everything. Like everybody else, we did that 10-day training on Zoom 2 years in a row. Like that's insane. And those cohorts stuck together and still did the work and truly succeeded in the program. And I'm thinking recently with some of our Gaza work, there is a lot of suppression that's happening on campuses, students that are targeted because they're working on issues related to Palestine. And our cohort that worked on Gaza just these last 10 months, they had to endure that, and they were resilient, and they kept showing up to the calls. They kept doing the lobby visits anyway. And so I just hope that spirit remains in the next 10 years, even when it feels hard.
Great. Thank you, Larissa. I'm gonna do sort of a, one or two sentence response maybe so we can end our call on time. But Rachel, do you have hopes for the next 10 years of all of this work?
Yeah, I would just love to see growth. I think having the more people the better, and we're already such a fantastic network, but I would like as many more young people as want to be involved, especially in the young adult programs, because they were so influential in my life.
Great. Thank you so much. Nancy.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I have so much to say, but most of it, I kind of, Tim and Larissa have already said, but I often envision our network as a sort of a mixed textile metaphor of weaving a quilt that blankets our country and our world in the world we seek. And so how do we build our quilt piece by piece, thread by thread, strengthen and repair it, make it more resilient, pass it along through generations and find uses for it, find new uses for it, and keep making it more beautiful. And so one way I imagine us reaching toward this vision is through intertwining these pieces and threads more, like you two, Larissa and Tim, have begun to speak about. I really think that instead of these programs being in parallel, they really need to be integrated more. And I love what you're all doing, but maybe there's more, maybe a buddy system. I love supporting the two having sort of interrelated support. And I would love if Sergio was in New York State, that the New York State team could have supported what he was doing when he was there, for example. And I'd love to see the advocacy teams in particular become more interdependent on one another and rely less on the FCNL staff, so that we could free staff up for dreaming and strategy, planning, education, and that sort of thing. In creativity and support and other things, which I could go on and on about, but I won't. And I love hearing what all the other people have to say. I think the possibilities are endless.
Thank you so much. All right, Susan or Sergio, do you want to share, and then Susan?
Sure,
And
I
then
can
we'll
go
wrap
next.
up.
I think one exciting thing is that it's more intergenerational. I think, I was there at the beginning of the program, so they were mostly silos. So that's really encouraging to continue to be more intergenerational. And I think state work. I think, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of things that that move at the state and local level. So I hope for the next 10 years that is somewhere that this network can support as well.
All right, and Susan.
Well, I want to continue with that same theme, but very specifically. When I first became acquainted with Quakers in the larger sense, I was a student at Bryn Mawr College near Philadelphia and attended Haverford meeting nearby, where some of the older friends would take a look at us college students and say, "Ooh, young people," and now in Bloomington Normal meeting with monthly meeting with nearby Illinois State University, we have recently seen a young couple come and begin to attend our meeting, and the advocacy team meeting as well. And one member of this couple said that he was interested in organizing students at the university as he goes through his last year of his degree. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's why I want Larissa to come to Illinois because, yeah, this is a place where it might happen, and we'll need some support. Now I'm saying, ooh, young people. But
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, I think there are definitely some themes emerging about our hopes and dreams for this work going forward. So as we wrap up, I did post in the chat some links to finding out more about the advocacy teams, our advocacy core program, if you've gotten excited about either or both of those. And I just wanted to acknowledge, Deborah, your message in the chat about the use that you have found in New Zealand for our advocacy materials. So while we are focused on the United States and US policymakers, I hope that some of our educational materials and approaches are also good in other contexts as well. I do want to say that if you want to take action right now to support what these teams and groups are working on this year, there's an action related to urging Congress to pass the Iran War Powers Resolution. This vote is coming up very soon, so that's an action that you can take. And our incoming advocacy core class is going to be focused on migration. They're starting their summer intensive in about a month. So you can tell Congress that mass deportation is not the answer to support the work they're doing. And I also want to say that, as I said, we've had these Quaker Changemaker events, sort of standalone events for the past 5 years, and we're doing some collaborative work, as we've talked about, wanting to bring our strands together to take these conversations into a broader advocacy context. So we're not going to be doing going forward these standalone Quaker Changemaker events, but you will see me and Larissa and Tim and others part of a new quarterly strategic advocacy call that we're going to be starting in the fall. So just wanted to highlight that transition. But if you are excited about advocacy after this whole conversation, you can actually, in 25 minutes at 8 o'clock, we have our monthly Intro to Advocacy with FCNL call. So you can just, roll right into a little bit of learning more about the way that we lobby. And then tomorrow, our friend from New Hampshire mentioned this as well. We have an event on migration, solidarity, and safety, working together for thriving communities. So some opportunities coming up to do things with FCNL. And so with that, I will wish you a good evening and good work ahead, and thank our speakers again. And I think that's everything from my end. Thank you so much for being here and joining us.